Welcome back, vintage car fans. We always try to make these deep dives special for our listeners. And this one's tailor-made for all you Vintage Car Chronicles fans out there.
Right.
The Daily Show on Spotify, Deezer, all those places.
Yeah.
Today, we're going deep, really deep on the Mercedes-Benz CLK GTR. Buckle up, because this car's got a story that's going to take us from the racetrack to the road, and it's a wild ride.
You hit the nail on the head when you say wild. The CLK GTR, it's like a snapshot of this amazing moment in time when race cars and road cars, they were practically the same thing. Mercedes basically had to invent a street-legal race car just to get on the starting grid.
Okay, so before we get into all that, let's rewind a bit.
Yeah.
The CLK GTR, it all started after the Deutsche Tourenwagen Meisterschaft, the DTM, folded back in '96.
Right.
It was a huge deal. The DTM was like the premier touring car series over in Germany. And Mercedes, they were the kings.
Yeah.
What happened? Why did it fall apart?
Well, costs were going through the roof, and some of the big names, like Opel and Alfa Romeo, they decided to pull out. It left Mercedes kind of stranded, looking for a new challenge. That's when they set their sights on the FIA GT Championship.
So they went from German touring cars to, what, international sports car racing? That's a pretty big leap.
It was, but there's a twist. The FIA GT Championship had this rule, a really unique one, that basically shaped the whole destiny of the CLK GTR.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about this. This is where things get interesting.
Right. To race in the FIA GT Championship, you couldn't just show up with a purpose-built race car. Nope, they had this rule, these homologation specials, they called them. Basically, you had to build a street-legal version of your race car. To race on Sunday, you had to be able to sell a version of that same car to the public on Monday.
So the CLK GTR wasn't just designed to win races. It had to exist as a road car, too. That must have been a crazy challenge. And to top it off, they only had 128 days to build the whole thing.
It was a mad dash. Mercedes and their partners at AMG, they basically pulled an all-nighter that lasted for months. They even went out and bought one of their competitors' cars, a McLaren F1 GTR, just to use as a test mule.
Wait, hold on. They bought their competitor's car. Now, that's dedication. Or maybe a little bit crazy. I don't know.
No, they were serious about getting it right. They swapped out the McLaren's BMW engine, put in Mercedes V12, and used it to test the CLK GTR's aerodynamics.
Right.
It's a pretty legendary story in the car world, and they even restored that McLaren and optioned it off a few years later.
Okay, so you've got a test mule from a rival, this insane deadline, and a whole lot of engineering magic happening behind the scenes. What came out the other end of all that?
A monster, basically. The CLK GTR, it exploded onto the racing scene in '97, won 6 races, took home both the Constructors' and Drivers' Championships. And remember, this was their first time in the FIA GT Championship.
Talk about making an entrance. But of course, they still had to make good on that street legal promise. Enter the CLK GTR Strassen version, a race car with license plates, basically.
Exactly. I mean, we're talking a 6.9-liter V12 engine, a body made almost entirely of carbon fiber, and a sequential transmission, just like they used in Formula One.
Yeah, and let's not forget the price tag. This thing was going for over $1.5 million back in 1998. But even if you were dropping that kind of cash, you'd still want some creature comforts, right?
Oh, sure. It had air conditioning, leather seats, even a decent audio system. They tried to make this race-bred beast a little bit more livable for everyday life, though I imagine it was still a pretty wild experience trying to navigate city traffic with all that race car DNA.
It reminds me of something I read. Paul Frere, the racing driver and journalist, he called driving the CLK GTR a real work of art. But he also said it wasn't exactly a car for running errands.
Frere always had a way with words. He understood that thrill, that raw power that came with driving something that was so close to a purebred race car.
Absolutely, and that's what makes these homologation specials so fascinating. They're like a window into this world that's usually reserved for professional racers. Okay, so we've covered the racing dominance, the insane street-legal version, but Mercedes wasn't done, were they? They took the CLK GTR even further with the Roadster and the Supersport, right?
You're right. They only made 6 CLK GTR Roadsters, so imagine that. Top down, that monstrous V12 roaring right behind you. Then you have the Supersport, which was just a total beast. It had a 7.3-liter engine cranking out over 700 horsepower. It was a collector's dream.
That's just insane. Do we know who got their hands on some of these super rare versions?
Well, the Sultan of Brunei, famous for his car collection, he snagged one of the Roadsters. And the Supersport, those were fetching crazy prices at auction, as you can imagine.
It's amazing to think that these cars, built just to meet some racing rules, became these sought-after treasures. But speaking of racing, Mercedes, they weren't content with just conquering the FIA GT Championship. They wanted the big one, the 24 Hours of Le Mans. To do it, they built the CLK GTR successor, the CLR. And well, let's just say things didn't exactly go according to plan.
Ah, the CLR. A completely different animal, lower, sleeker, even more aerodynamic than the CLK GTR. But during testing, and even in practice before the race, they had a few incidents. Let's just call them incidents.
Incidents might be an understatement. During qualifying, Mark Webber, the Formula One driver,
Yeah.
his CLR literally took flight. Twice. The thing was flipping through the air before slamming back down on the track. It was terrifying to watch.
Yeah, those were some scary moments. It turned out there was a serious issue with the car's aerodynamics. It just wasn't stable at high speeds. They tried to fix it, stiffened up the suspension, added some dive planes to the front, but it wasn't enough.
And then during the race itself, another CLR, this one driven by Peter Dumbreck, it had an even crazier crash. The thing went airborne, flew way up high, and landed in the trees beyond the track. It's a miracle. Dumbreck, like Webber, walked away with just minor injuries.
You're telling me. It was a horrifying reminder of how dangerous motorsport can be, but it also showed how far safety technology had come. The fact those drivers survived those crashes is a testament to how strong those cars were built.
It really makes you appreciate the risks those drivers take. But even with the CLR's, let's say, challenges at Le Mans, the CLK GTR, it still stands as an icon of 90s sports car racing.
Absolutely. It's a legend. The racing victories, that incredible design, the fact that they even made those super rare road legal versions, it's all part of automotive history. It was time when homologation specials, they weren't just about meeting the rules, they were pushing the boundaries of performance and design.
And it's a car that still gets people excited today. What I find really interesting is how a car that came about because of some specific racing rules ended up having this huge impact, not just on racing, but on the whole car world.
That's a great point. Its very existence forced everyone to rethink their priorities, especially when it came to safety and even how racetracks were designed.
So the CLK GTR, it's not just a story about a cool car or winning races. It's about pushing the limits, taking risks, and learning from both the good and the, say, learning experiences.
Well said. And it shows how connected motorsport is to the cars we drive every day. Racing, it's always been this testing ground, New technologies, ideas, they get proven on the track, and then boom, they make their way into the cars we drive every day. The CLK GTR, it was like a sneak peek into the future of performance cars, lightweight, super aerodynamic, that insane engine, the whole package.
And that future, it's still unfolding, right? Like, we're still chasing those same things. Lighter, faster, more efficient cars. And a lot of that comes from what they learn in motorsports. But let's talk about the people behind the CLK GTR for a second. Who are the masterminds that made this thing happen?
Well, you got to start with AMG. That's Mercedes' high-performance division. Those guys, they were the heart and soul of the CLK GTR project. Engine building, motorsport engineering, that was their bread and butter. They were essential.
Right. And then there was HWA AG, the company founded by Hans-Werner Alfrecht, one of the original founders of AMG. They actually built the cars, both the race cars and the street-legal versions.
HWA, those were the master craftsmen. They took AMG's vision and made it a reality. It was a real collaboration, Some of the best minds in the car world all working together.
And even the drivers got involved. Bernd Schneider, the German racing legend, he helped develop the CLK GTR and then drove it to victory in the '97 FIA GT Championship.
Schneider was there from the beginning, giving feedback on how the car handled, how it performed. It's amazing to think that a driver's input could shape a car that complex.
It really shows that you can't just rely on computers and engineering. You need that human element, that feel for the car. That's how you really push the limits.
No doubt about it. It's all about teamwork. The designers, the engineers, the mechanics, the drivers, even the support staff, everyone played a part in the CLK GTR's success.
It's a good reminder that behind every big achievement, every breakthrough, there's a whole team of people making it happen. We've talked about the CLK GTR's impact on racing, on technology, even on culture. But what was it actually like to drive this thing?
From what I've heard, and I've heard a lot, the CLK GTR was a beast to handle. Raw power, super responsive, but also unforgiving. You really had to know what you were doing to get the most out of it.
I can only imagine. That V12 engine roaring, the carbon fiber chassis, the sequential gearbox.
Yeah.
It must have been an incredible experience for all the senses.
There's an element of danger, too, driving a car that's so closely connected to racing.
Especially after what happened with the CLR at Le Mans.
Exactly. But for the lucky few who got to drive the CLK GTR, whether on a track or just out on the open road, It must have been unforgettable.
That exclusivity, that rarity, that's part of what makes it so special.
Yeah.
It represents this unique moment in time, this perfect storm of ambition, engineering, and just pure automotive art.
And that's why collectors go crazy for them. They only built 25 road-going versions of the CLK GTR, which instantly makes them super collectible.
And then add in the racing pedigree, winning the FIA GT Championship, and that stunning design. It's no surprise these cars are worth a fortune.
Millions, easy. And they rarely come up for sale. When they do, it's a feeding frenzy. Collectors from all over the world all wanting a piece of that history.
It's funny how a car that was built just to meet some racing rules ended up being this holy grail for car collectors. But beyond the collector's aspect, I think it's important to look at how the CLK GTR changed how we see high-performance cars.
Yeah, the CLK GTR came along at a time when things were changing in the car world. Supercars were becoming more accessible, not just for the super rich anymore.
So they were becoming more aspirational for the rest of us.
Exactly. And the CLK GTR, it had that wow factor, the looks, the racing heritage. It just fueled that aspiration. It represented the ultimate in performance and exclusivity.
And people were getting more into motorsports, too. Formula One was huge. New racing series like the FIA GT Championship were popping up. And it all brought racing into people's living rooms.
And that made people want cars that embodied that racing spirit, the speed, the technology, the whole glamorous package. The CLK GTR, it wasn't just a car, it was a cultural phenomenon.
It was a symbol of this era where performance cars, they became more than just machines. They were like statements.
You got it. Style, status, aspiration, it was all there. The CLK GTR, with its limited production, its racing wins, and its undeniable looks, it became this object of desire.
It's incredible how a car that started out as a way to get around some racing rules ended up having such a huge impact, not just on the car world, but on technology and culture and how we see high-performance cars.
The CLK GTR, it's proof that innovation can come from the most unexpected places, and that when you strive for excellence, even when you hit some bumps along the way, you can leave a lasting legacy.
And it reminds us that cars, they're not just machines. They can make us feel things, they can spark passion, and they can even change how we see the world. Speaking of changing how we see the world, it's worth thinking about the CLK GTR's legacy in terms of sustainability and the future of the car industry. We're in this time where everything's about electric vehicles, fuel efficiency, reducing our impact on the environment. Where does a car like the CLK GTR with its gas-guzzling V12 fit into all of that?
That's a really interesting question. The CLK GTR, it definitely represents a time when performance, well, sometimes it came at the cost of being environmentally friendly, but does that mean its legacy is irrelevant now?
That's what I'm wondering. Can we still appreciate a car like this when the world is moving in such a different direction?
I think we can. We can appreciate it for what it was,
Yeah.
a product of its time, a symbol of an era where speed and power were everything.
But we can also learn from it.
Absolutely. The CLK GTR was all about lightweight construction, aerodynamic efficiency, advanced materials. Those are all things that are still relevant today, even as we shift towards electric cars and more sustainable technologies.
So what you're saying is the CLK GTR's legacy can actually inform the development of high-performance electric cars and other sustainable car technologies.
Exactly. The drive for efficiency and performance, it's not tied to a specific type of engine. It's about pushing the boundaries no matter what the technology is.
And the CLK GTR, it embodies that spirit perfectly. It shows us that innovation, ambition, that relentless pursuit of excellence, it can lead to amazing things.
And sometimes those amazing things, they have a ripple effect that goes way beyond what anyone could have imagined. The CLK GTR is a perfect example of that. It's a story that still inspires people, captures their imagination, and makes us think differently about what's possible with cars.
Okay, so before we wrap things up, I've got one last question for you.
Yeah.
If you had to sum up the CLK GTR's legacy, like in one sentence, what would it be?
That's a tough one. But I'd say the Mercedes-Benz CLK GTR, it's proof that humans can create incredible things, and that the pursuit of automotive excellence, it never goes out of style. It captures a moment in time, a feeling, and it left its mark on the world of motorsport and way beyond.
I like that. That's a good one. Really captures the spirit of the car. You know, as we're talking about all this, I'm feeling kind of, I don't know, a little bit of awe, but also a little bit sad.
Sad, how come?
Well, cars like the CLK GTR, these raw, unapologetic homologation specials, they just don't seem to exist anymore. The car world's changing so fast, you know? Regulations, safety stuff, the whole shift to electric cars. I just can't imagine a car like the CLK GTR being born today.
I hear you. Times are definitely different, but I think that feeling, that longing for these pure raw machines, it says something about us, you know? It's that desire for something special, something that pushes the limits.
And the CLK GTR, it definitely did that. It was bold, it was uncompromising, and it had this incredible design that still turns heads today.
It was a statement, no doubt about it.
So as we say goodbye to the CLK GTR, let's not be sad that it's gone. Let's celebrate what it was.
Yeah, let's remember a car that dared to be different, a car that pushed boundaries, a car that left a legacy.
And who knows, maybe a spirit will live on, you know? Maybe it'll inspire a whole new generation of car designers to create the next wave of incredible machines. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of the Mercedes-Benz CLK GTR. It's been a fun one.
It has. Always a pleasure to talk about these legendary cars.
And to all you Vintage Car Chronicles listeners out there, remember, there's a new episode every single day. So hit that subscribe button and we'll catch you on the next automotive adventure.